Welcome! Today we are exploring a truly epic concept. We're going to unpack the journey of the human soul in Islamic theology, known as Akhirah, and see how it completely collides with the idea of human free will. If you've ever wondered how the little choices you make every single day fit into a massive cosmic timeline, you are absolutely going to love what we're looking at today. Let's jump right in. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the free will paradox, then look at Sunni versus Shia views, walk through the journey to judgment, explore the visions of heaven and hell, and finally bring it all back down to earth with the impact on daily life.
Okay, let's dive straight into section 1, the free will paradox. So here is a massive, universal paradox to chew on, the concept of Al Qadr, or predestination. Seriously, think about this for a second. If there is an all-knowing creator who already knows exactly how your entire life is going to play out, from day one to your very last breath, do you actually have a choice in what you're doing right now? Or are we all just kind of playing out a pre-written script?
To help wrap our heads around this heavy theology, the text gives us two really fantastic analogies. First, picture a mom offering her kid a choice, a bowl of peas or a bowl of ice cream. Now, she knows him so well that she is absolutely certain he's going to go for the ice cream, right? But here's the catch. Just because she knows what he's going to pick doesn't mean she forced him to pick it. It was still entirely his choice. Or think about it like this. Imagine you're a time traveler. You jump 100 years into the future, jot down what people are doing, and bring that notebook back to the present. You writing it down didn't rob those future people of their free will. You just had the incredible ability to see their free choices before they happened. And that beautifully illustrates the core Islamic answer to this whole paradox. Because God created time itself, God isn't trapped inside it like we are. For God, there really isn't a past, present, or future. It's more like everything is just known at once. So divine supremacy and human free will, they aren't actually fighting each other. We make our choices in real time through cause and effect, while God sits entirely outside of time, simply knowing. As chapter 13, verse 11 of the Quran puts it, God does not change the condition of a people unless they change what is in themselves. Which brings us to section 2, Sunni versus Shia views. So, how do different Islamic traditions actually handle this paradox in practice? Well, there are a couple of distinct perspectives. Some Sunni Muslims lean into the absolute supremacy of God's will. They believe God has already determined everything, writing it all down in a book of decrees, the Allah al-Mahfuz, before the universe was even a thing. But they say this destiny is purely based on all those foreknowledge of the free choices people will eventually make. On the flip side, many Shia Muslims reject the idea of predestination altogether. Their perspective is that God definitely knows what will happen, but absolutely does not decide it for us. The thinking here is that humans have to possess complete free will, otherwise it would be completely unfair for God to judge us for things we were just programmed to do. For Shia Muslims, this whole idea is rooted in adalat, or divine justice. It's actually one of the 5 roots of usul ad-din. They look at the universe through a really strict, objective moral framework. Basically, things are inherently right or wrong, with no gray areas. Allah is perfect, so he always acts morally and, as the Quran says, does not wrong anyone. Because of this, humans are given reason. We're uniquely equipped to use that reason to navigate this moral framework, make our free choices, and ultimately, on the day of judgment, that is exactly what we'll be evaluated on.
All right, moving on to section 3, the journey to judgment.
Now that we've tackled the philosophy of free will, let's look at the literal roadmap. What is the cosmic timeline of a human soul? In Islam, this is Akhirah, the afterlife. Basically, existence is split in two. You've got this short, temporary test right here on Earth, followed by eternity. When someone dies, their soul enters a sort of waiting room, a state called barzakh. It just waits there until the massive cosmic event of Judgment Day, which is the moment that dictates their final destination, either paradise or Jahannam. And that eternal fate is a direct, undeniable result of how you handled your test on Earth. Now, the arrival of that last day, the source texts describe it with just staggering apocalyptic intensity. Nobody knows exactly when it's going to happen, but the signs are literally earth-shattering. The Quran talks about a sudden blinding light, the sky itself being physically ripped apart, the moon disappearing, stars violently scattering across the universe, the oceans literally boiling with fire, and mountains just crumbling into dust. It is the absolute definitive end of the physical world as we know it. Right after that cosmic upheaval, the actual process of judgment kicks in, step by step. First, the graves open up, and every single soul is resurrected to face Allah. Then it's time for the scales. Every person has their earthly deeds, which have been meticulously recorded by guardian angels their whole life, weighed out. If the book holding your good deeds is heavier, you are headed to paradise. If not, the destination is hell. But here is a really crucial detail. Muslims believe Allah is intensely compassionate and merciful. That means you are judged by your true underlying intentions in life, not just the physical outcome of what you did. Let's transition into Section 4, Visions of Heaven and Hell. Once judgment is handed down, souls head to one of two ultimate destinations. Let's look at how they're vividly described, starting with heaven, or Al-Jannah, which literally translates to garden. It is promised as a place of unimaginable beauty and everlasting bliss, where everyone gets their youth back. The Quran describes believers being greeted by angels and welcomed into a final home with zero sin, zero nastiness, and absolutely zero stress. Just total unbroken peace. Tradition even says Al-Jannah has 8 different gates, including special VIP entrances for people who were exceptionally charitable or who completed the Hajj pilgrimage. But then, in very stark contrast, there is Jahannam, or hell. The imagery used here is heavy. It's meant to evoke serious fear. It's described as a place of total darkness and an unquenchable fire that the Quran says is almost bursting with fury. But there's a really important nuance we need to point out. For believers who sinned, Jahannam is actually a temporary place of purification. Once Allah decides it's time, those believers eventually move into Al-Jannah. However, for complete unbelievers who rejected God and did evil, it's described as a place of eternal punishment and constant suffering. It's really fascinating to see how Muslims interpret these intense descriptions today. The vast majority accept the Quranic descriptions of Al-Jannah and Jahannam literally, meaning they are real, physical places you will genuinely experience. But there is a minority view that reads these descriptions as purely metaphorical. To them, ideas like boiling water or lush gardens are just symbolic hints. They're basically concepts used to help our limited human brains grasp spiritual states that are totally beyond our understanding, states of either being perfectly in the presence of God or entirely cut off from Him. And finally, Section 5, Impact on Daily Life. So, we talked about all these massive cosmic concepts and the timeline of the soul. But what does this actually mean for someone on a random Tuesday? Well, the whole point is that believing in Akhirah is supposed to completely transform how you live every single day. If you view life strictly as a temporary test, you become incredibly conscious of your actions. Believers walk through life knowing that invisible angels are quite literally recording their every thought and action. Naturally, that creates a culture where you're constantly reflecting on yourself and quickly asking Allah for forgiveness when you mess up. But the absolute biggest takeaway is niyyah, the supreme importance of having a pure, correct intention behind literally everything you do. And this brings us to a really beautiful concept called ibadah. Essentially, ibadah means that worship in Islam is not just restricted to praying on a mat. If your niyyah, your intention, is solid and focused on pleasing God, then literally every positive thing you do becomes an act of worship. Whether you're reading the Quran, being totally honest at your job, taking food to a sick neighbor, or just working really hard to feed your family, it all counts. It's all stacking up in that heavy book of good deeds for Judgment Day. Now, there is one specific application of this that unfortunately gets entirely misunderstood, and the source material tackles it head on. In Islam, there is the concept of jihad, struggling to stand up for and defend your faith. Doing this might lead to martyrdom, which is believed to instantly bring a soul into the presence of Allah. But some violent extremists have completely twisted this teaching. They've falsely used this idea of martyrdom to try and justify horrific things like suicide bombings and aggression against non-Muslims just to establish political rule. The text is incredibly clear on this. That kind of violent extremism is a severe distortion of what the actual teachings say. Which leaves us with a final, pretty heavy thought to chew on. We've just seen how this theological framework connects a massive divine paradox directly to the absolute minutiae of our daily lives. Every choice, every little intention is basically a brushstroke on a giant cosmic canvas just waiting to be revealed. So I'll leave you with this. How would your choices, like how you talk to a stranger, how you do your job, or how you handle an inconvenience, change right now if you knew your entire life was a recorded test meant for an eternal stage? Thanks so much for joining me to explore this today. Keep learning and keep asking those great questions.